listeners, Harika here, and I'm super excited to welcome you to UppTalk. If you're ready to learn and get your hands work wonders in the world of information technology, then you're in the right place. When I say UppTalk, we are not just another edtech company. Consider we are your learning partner committed to unlocking your full potential. Whether you're stepping into the world of technology for the first time or looking to advance your career, we provide top-tier, hands-on courses to build up your career. Let's take our first step towards learning here and explore it.
This is the same integration that you created. Here, what we are doing is, after we were able to retrieve the file, we are converting the CSV to an XML. And based on that conversion, we are passing it into a splitter with the XPath root row. And then we are assigning, similar to the previous integration which we did for outbounds. We are assigning the employees to the same integration. ID, first name, last name, status, and email. With this, using this MBL expression. And as you might have seen that we put one row without email right. That we can try out a validation where email is empty. If it is a text string, as you can see that you can use not equals to a blank right within single quotes, or you can use the this is a keyword empty. This also works in MBL expression. There, what we were doing is we were adding a failure message and sending the failure message out via and put integration message with the severity error and the summary of the message that we have selected here, configured here. That was the overall integration. This part from the splitter and validation. This you guys already know. And as part of this integration, the main learning part of it was how we can use a route strategy. Use a duck iterator strategy and consume the file in this in a variable and take it forward in our mediation context. That was the part that we were doing. Now, as you have learned about outbound integrations, inbound integrations, the next step is about XLT. As I said yesterday, your mostly go-to resources for XSLT will be 3.2. It's a standard repository where it has multiple functions and you get XLT related information all across the internet. I think Stack Overflow is a very good go-to place where I normally try to reach out if I have any issues or Workday communities. Also another. Basically, XSLT means it's an extensible style sheet language transformation, which is, let's say, it's like a template-based language. You write XML and you write a style sheet, and using that style sheet, you transform incoming XML messages to different formats. It can be XML, it can be CSV, it can be text, whatever. But the point here is, why do we need XSL? There can be certain scenarios or certain very complicated requirements where you, let's say, here I have mentioned very two basic requirements. For example, you have assassins, right? There's a particular format of assassins. Let's say your vendor doesn't want the SSN entire, only wants the last 4 digit. You can use XLT functions to do that. Or maybe you want to do a if-else logic. You can use that in the XSLT. Definitely you can do if else logic in the ML expressions. Yesterday I showed you one such sample. If this then this. But if it is a very complex thing, if there are multiple nested, if else, then I would suggest it is better to use XSLT because XSLT is faster than ML expressions. Your performance of your integration will always be better. Basically, XLT, this language has three versions. 1.0 was very yummy, it was way back. It provided like core stuff about this, but XLT 2.0. XSLT 2.0 gave us some kind of additional flexibility, different functions, format dates, date time, all that basic stuff. Group by, and finally came SLT 3.0, which gives us streaming capabilities. Streaming capabilities. It's a very important tool, not a tool or feature, I would say, because whenever you are using XSLT 2.2, it actually loads the entire XML into the memory and tries to process it. The runtime memory consumption is high. But XSLT 3.0 provides the streaming capabilities, which basically help Studio to use the XML messages sequentially. Instead of loading the entire data set into the memory, it loads sequentially and you can use different elements like X, S, L, iterate, basically a kind of a for loop, and iterate through each and every node. You can use Excel accumulators, basically, which again helps you to collect the data, use it in different calculations. Kind of sample use case for XL accumulators. For example, you are consuming two different reports and you want to generate a single file. Some data is coming from one report, some data is coming from another report. Let's take an example. Let's say you are generating a job profile or a worker file. A particular worker profile is tagged to a particular job profile for every worker in Workday. And for that job profile, there will be compensation grade and other different information. Compensation grade and all and compensation grade specific information. You won't get it in the same report, which you are building based on worker. You have to have a separate report for compensation grade, comp grade, and other attributes related to compensation grade. And you are bringing it and you want to generate an output file which will have worker, its demographic data, his job profile, comp grade related to the job profile, and other associated attributes for the job profile. And let's see one, too. In order to bring that entire thing together, you have to identify this is the worker for that. This is the job profile for this job profile on the comp grade file. What comp grade is there? Using Excel accumulator allows you to take both the data and look up like you take it. Take a job profile and look it up on the comp grade file, comp grade report output, and see is it there. This is the job profile, is a concrete specific to this job profile and it has, let's say, 5 other different field value I want to pick. You pick it and finally generate an XML. I would say the using XL accumulators and iterate. These are very advanced level of XSL, XSLT transformation logic, and it is something that you will slowly learn in the more complex thing you build. But for this, as a scope of this training, what I want to make you understand is try with the basic thing, how the basics of XSL work for that. I will walk you through certain XSLT codes, how we can handle it, and then slowly take you few levels up. Having said that, I will first show you a simple XSL code. Which you can find in this project. Here, what I did was a very simple assembly. Where I have added this in a right step. If you see the XML, the root, node is called root and its individual data row is row and it has individual fields here. Similarly, I added 3 rows of data and an XML format. Think of this as this is one row, this is second row, this is third row, and these are columns. And then I want to put some logic. I want to change this tags. Maybe I want to change it from active. Let's say if it's active, I want to put it as A. If it's inactive, I want to put it as I, right? How would the XLT look? If we go here, this step, how we add it here is simple. If you click on the async mediation, if you go up, this is the create XSL. This is for cell 2.2. I would suggest always use this one, which is XSLT Plus, which adds streaming capabilities and adds XSLT 3 low. Version is 3.0. 3 is always faster than XLT 2.0. Always go with this, and it's retro compatible. If you use this component, it XSLT Fredo can handle the version 2.2 as well. If you click on this, and then you have to add. If you add it here and put this, and either you can click here and from here you can create an XLT file like this next. Finish. It will automatically create this header code. But if you do not want that, normally what I do is I create my XLT in the Oxygen tool like this, and I run it against the XML. And then once I am satisfied with it, I add it here in the studio. And if you want to go by that route, once your file is done, you can just basically click on here, simple workspace. If you have it in your studio assembly, or can go click on external and just click on whatever XLT file you want to add. That is the way you add an XLT plus component step inside an async mediation. Let's see how this is working. Basically, you create XSLT file on Oxygen. But you can use it in Studio as well. But for that, you just need to click on this create XSLT file and code it in here. I don't. It's again based on varies from developer to developer. I prefer using Oxygen because the best thing about Oxygen is you can select the XML data source and select the XSLT file. And if you click here, it will run and show you if there is any error and how the output is coming. Everything can see here. You don't have to always go to the studio and then deploy, run, and see. I find it it's not needed. Can you click on the interface of what the studio? Just see how it is. If it is not there, or what? If it's not that convenient, or just to see how it looks. This will look like this. Same thing. Same thing. Here I am. As I said, that XSLT Plus is backward compatible. Amic XSLT Plus. But here I am using the version as 2.2. If you want to use XSLT 3.2, then you just need to put 3.0 as the version. Again, these headers will automatically get created whenever you create, either in Studio or Oxygen. For example, in Oxygen as well, if you click on this accessory style sheet, you see it will generate the header automatically. We go back. What I'm trying to achieve is this is a I will show you from here. Close this. This is the code. And this is my sample XML. It is open here. Oh my god. I have much going on. This studio assembly is from this right step. It is basically getting this data. And I want to transform this data with a different root name. A different row name, different individual. Field individual XML tags. I want to change this. And also I want to do some transformation, actual transformation, where I will change active to inactive to I. That means when the data from this right step flows past this and gets stored, hits the store step, I should get an output, something that should look like this. I'm just hitting Ctrl Shift and P. It will automatically format it. I want to do this. How does this come up? This is an Excel template. Template match means if you put a slash here. What it does is it just iterates from it. You are basically telling the style sheet that this is go by this format. It's nothing but root row, then this, then root row. It's just traversing one row at a time. Then I want this right. Did I close it? Or just run it again? What I want the root node to be called root_node. After XL template, I put this begin tag, and every begin tag has to have an end tag. It's fine. Is it visible? Just minimize it a bit. Looks good. It's visible, right? Can anyone confirm? This root node you see here. It ends in this. The syntax is less than greater than within these two brackets. You have to have the root node here, and the end tag will be same with a slash after the this less than symbol. And mostly, if you add like this test and put close this, automatically Oxygen creates the end tag that you don't have to worry about closing the tag. What I will do is my begin. My root node tag is done. Now I have to iterate through each and every row in the XML. Right, we have 3 rows. It can be 3000, 300,000. We have to write XL for each select root/row. This is XL for each means it's like a for loop again. For each row of what? This for from root till row right. This for each block, that means for each row of data. And whatever you put inside will come up in the output file. Then we want the employee ID tag to show up as employee number. You put an employee number again, a begin tag and end tag. And you want the value to be printed like this 1, 3, 4, 5, the employee ID. As in SLU, like for example in SQL, right? We use a select the field name, right? Same thing. The keyword is XL value of. Again in Oxygen, you just need to write XSL value. Put a colon, it will start giving you options. What do you want to use? You see value, you just click on this. It will create this and here. XL value of what? From what value you want to take. You want to take the value of this, which is nothing but the tag XML tag of the particular field for which the data you want to pull. This is employee ID. And remember you are in your for each clause. You have mentioned root/row. That means similar to XPath in the MPL expressions when we are using write or splitter. You have mentioned root/row. That means you are now inside the row. You are now here. You can directly put employee ID. Right? If there is another before employee, if there is another child row, then in that case you have to put this XPath. This is called XPath. Child node, whatever it is. /employee ID. A few days back, I think we spoke. You have in XSLT, XPath, you have to traverse node by node to reach to that XML data element which you want to fetch. Understood as of now. All of those out of complement features you have on Oxygen are not available on the Workday Studio interface. Let's see. Yes, some of them are. As you can see, it gives you big data. But I don't think it's a value. That one is not. That was not auto-populating. It's like a basic trial version, but to be honest, I don't really feel comfortable using this. I always go with Oxygen. This is how you create the for loop to iterate every row in your XML file. And as how you pull the value of each field is using XL value of. Select within double quotes your name of your XML element if you have multiple child nodes to traverse. Through the child nodes to the element with the path child node 1/ child node 2/ till you get to the point. Then you want nen, right? First time you want to put fnef nen. Similarly f in begin tag in tag. You add it here. Similarly, last name like that. Let's say you want to have the active like. Let's say you want the active as it is. If it is active as it is, you can write whatever tag you want and just XL value of status, similar to how you added last name, first name, employee. But let's say you want to convert it from active to A or inactive to. I just transform it. You have to put an if else if it's active, then else simple E. If else comes as XSLT when otherwise. This one is using a variable. I've added for demonstration purpose. I'll come to that. Let's say. Let's consider this piece of code. If whenever you write a automatically you get an end tag along with this statement. Right. This is your statement. And this is how you put comments. T. Understand this way. To choose means like if or not exactly choose means. Within this choose, you are actually determining, giving the criteria. It's like the if statement. When will this fire? Alex choose when test means is the argument you want to put here. What? Based on what argument? If status equals to within single quotes active. L text. Why text? Because for this particular element, you have already initialized the XML tag. This one, mel state. It does no variable rate. They have initiated the XML tag. This is the begin tag and end tag. And within that you just want to put a text value. Right, for that. This is the since it's XL text. This means is whatever you put within this. It will just print it out within this. Two tags in the output. If you put a 1 to 3, it will put 1 to 3. That's how and let's say the else clause. Right. For else we have otherwise. XLL when you add it here. Equal. Act. Right. Then you put whatever you want to do. Now the else part. For else you have to use the keyword. Otherwise, again just again and otherwise. And on the otherwise, you just put whatever. Processing logic, you put it. This is how an if else clause works. Again, if there is any nested, then you have to put within this. If you want to do another nested logic again, simple. You have to add again another XL choose. Then when XSL, when you have to put the argument, which is the criteria, and similarly drill down based on your requirement. This is how you can use basic Excel choose when otherwise to transform an XML element based on your business logic. Is that understood? This part. Also, this is without using variable right. Now, what if there is another way? because I just wanted to tell you that let's say you are. Now you have a huge XML to code, and this is not a direct status. There might be a path, massive path, right? Child node 1 slash child node 2 traversing going down. And you have to use multiple XL, choose when blah blah, and your XL code will have to write a lot of code, right? Smarter ways using a variable. And this variable thing is very useful for other purposes as well based on your business criteria. How do you define a variable before your template? Create the template. You use the keyword XSL variable similar. We just write XSL, put a V. That will give you this, and here you initialize the variable. For example, in our case, let's take the XSL variable name. You have employee status fine. Now you have defined the variable. I have to assign the value to the variable. Again, after always keep in mind after the for each loop, because here before the for each begins, there is no data right. You're not fetching data. From this step, you are actually fetching data from the XML. Once you initiate the for loop for each, then you call the variable and pass the value. This is the syntax XLR variable name. You will put the name, whatever is there, and how you are passing the value. Select status means whatever is the value of this, it will. For the first row, when this for loop executes, your variable gets assigned as active. But for the second row, it is inactive. When the loop goes for the second round, for the second row of data, this variable will be inactive. If you go down, this part of it, employee status variable. Second, same XSL choose. Instead of writing when test is status, you just call the variable and using oxygen. Calling a variable is very simple. You just need to put a $sign and whatever variables you have selected, it will pop up. For example, show you cell variable. Sorry, not it. Let's say. Let's do AXL choose when test. Right here, you're passing the value of the variable as an argument. Basically, what you do is to put a dollar and whatever variables you have defined in the code. If there are 15 variables, all the 15 will come up. You just need to choose it. And then put whatever processing you want to do. Same thing I did here. When test, the variable is active. You put it as A. Otherwise, put it as I. This is a very simple thing. But let's say you have to write here worker slash, personal info slash. Have to go drill deep slash. Instead of writing all that, you can just write it one time. Store it in a variable here. This of putting it here. Put it here and just call the variable simple, like any other programming language. That is how you play with variables. Is that understood? One small question. Let's say that we get two big files. This is the method that we have to follow according to Workday to get that bound together in a single file. You have to. There are different ways of it. You can use hash maps. You can use hash maps as one way. Accessibility point is another way. But overall, your basic building blocks of accessibility are these things which I have told them. I will show some more demonstrations as well. In order to combine two files, basically what you need to have a common field between those two files that you need to create the variable. That is when we create the accumulators. Using the accumulator and contextual, there's a thing called contextual variable, which I will show you after this. Using variable accumulators, you can look up, for example, one set of one file has employed the another file, as it's like a primary key and foreign key, right? One file you have the primary key as employed and another file you have foreign. In the same file, a foreign key of email ID and the other file, email ID, is coming. Your accumulator will. What we do is you will take the email ID from the second file, look it up where it is matching, and then pull the employee ID and join the entire data. But again, these are not very, is a very complex use of accessibility. I would not say rare, but it's not very common. If you run this, the final output will be like that. Similarly, just like active and inactive, you can have validations like whether the email exists or not. Same thing which we did here in the studio. Using validate expression, you can do the same with XSLT as well. And it depends if it's a straightforward row by row thing, simple thing, use validate expression. Or if you are creating XSLT, right, you have to create for your purposes of your requirement. You can use those validations and there as well. I will demonstrate you an end-to-end integration where I have used multiple kind of variable assignments, validations, and all. Going back to our, this is clear. Then there is another business case which you will find, which we'll get is creating an output file. Now since we've using a header, maybe a footer, doing some counts how many rows, trailer rows. That also you can handle with XSLT. Let's say you have to have a comma separated file. You have to put the limiters, all the commas. And let's say there might be a scenario where within the comma, within the individual fields, let's say address field, right? 1, 2, 3, 3, comma, right. We can have addresses where in the address fields, there are commas. If you are generating a CSV file, which is having comma in the individual field data. If you open that in Excel, the structure of the file gets distorted. In order to avoid that, you can wrap it within double quotes individual fields. That's a standard approach we normally take. If you have those kind of requirements, and this is again not specific to Studio, only in EIBs as well, you can use the same logic. This one, where I was actually consuming a report. And this was the report name. We were sending some data to the Salesforce team. This is a real-time code that we created. What we did here was that You see the variables. I initialize this variable like called delimiter and assign the comma here. Then initialize another variable called next line. This is actually the code for next line. Again, don't have to memorize this. You will find it in the community. Or any for that matter. Search in Google anywhere. And this one is called wrap. Wrap is nothing but to wrap the individual field with a double quote. And I had to create a header as well for this file. Here the header starts simple. Template match. You're going no for loop now because I will print the header only once. I'll be printing the raw and the output file. Then I will do the for loop. Just because the header is once, I will print the header first. What I'm doing. I'll show you the output file. I think that will be clearer. There is a sample XML for this. This one. Oh, sorry, I didn't choose the right one. This is how the data will come up. Now see the employee. ID, the legal name, you have the wrapped in double quotes with a comma. Then again, wrapped in double quotes, the field data, comma. How we are doing this is. Second. I go. This wrap is just nothing but the quote. I'm calling it first. I'm printing the data with using Excel value of I'm putting header item 1. This is nothing but a tag and just putting it there. Here and the output file will not generate this header item 1 in the output, this tag in the output. Because I have mentioned that XSL output is method is text. That is why here. I haven't provided the output type here. That is why when we were trying to just print a text, we had mentioned this XL text to add to make the style sheet understand that this value is nothing but a text value. But here we are. I already initialized this. Mentioned output method as text. Just putting this simply employee vision employee ID legal name same thing. I'm wrapping it with double quotes, then putting a comma which is delimiter here from the variable. I print all the different headers one by one and put a next line here. Then comes my data row, similar to how I used it here. The detailed data row starts here. I have to wrap it every detail, every data element, every field with a double quote. I put one here, one and between I'm calling the XML. Whatever the XML element, I have the XML tag name. I have. If you go down, it's all straightforward. Then here I have used the next nested. Choose when otherwise. What I'm doing is the logic here is there's a field called appointment. This particular client, they do their appointments like associate, senior, associate, principal, and the people who are not appointed. They have a status called, not titled. We had to send this information to Salesforce. What we were doing is the logic here, as you can see. First of all, if the appointment is not blank, if there is an appointment, then if it is a chairman, then we are sending it, converting it from chairman to principal. Otherwise, whatever the appointment is, this choose ends here. Out of that, if there is no appointment, that means that employee worker doesn't have, is not yet appointed. The Salesforce site they would like to call it not titled. We are putting it as not titled. Makes sense. In one system, it is cool. For example, let's use that. In Workday, it is called chairman, and they wanted to have a Salesforce integration. Exactly. They want to have it. Have it as they want to have the data chairman to be called out as principal. And for not titled ones, we don't put anything, but they want it to be called out in the output file as not titled. We're using a nested if-else clause is basically nothing but an if-else. Right? When choose is something. It's like this is if this do this, otherwise else do this. And accessibility is just one extra thing. Choose when otherwise. That's the total block of if-else logic. And you can do date formatting here as well. Like as I have mentioned here, the higher dates and all. Format, it is a function. You can just put it in a one. It will basically do MDD or whatever thing you want to know. Whatever format you want to do. And finally, you put a next line. Your for each ends here. Whenever you write the accessor for each, your end tag will automatically get populated. Your template ends here, which you started with. Template match with a /default. And then finally, style sheet ends. And when this runs, it will give you a data output like this. Makes sense? Yes, and that would check the entire rows of the exact. What you're doing here is whatever if your XML has. This one is an XML. Report data report entry. Each report entry is one row. Similarly, whatever if there are 300,000 rows, this particular the header will be printed once. Then your data will be like for each. For each, it will loop through 300,000 times and write the full CSV output file. And again, when I started with Studio, when I got certified, I was at that point of time, I was working with a partner organization who was a Workday partner. When we got certified in Workday Studio, there were no as such training sessions for accessibility. They just gave us the W3 org and it's like you try this, try this, try this. You learn the hard way. What sometimes community helps, sometimes Stack Overflow helps. That is how I think everyone learns if someone has background in accessibility. Great. If not, you learn on job. The more complicated stuff you do, you pick it up. You enhance your skills. Is that clear up till now? Now we take you through an integration, a real-time integration which we built, which actually uses accessibility, and we are using passing data from Studio into the accessibility code, pulling out data from the accessibility outside, doing validation. It's going to be pretty interesting again. This is the integration. The requirement again, this is a boomerang integration. If you go back, if you remember that boomerang integrations are the ones which takes data from Workday, do some process that data to apply some business logic and push it back to Workday. And you can use this in terms of automation purposes as well. The background of this integration was that the HRIS team, the admin team, they were basically whenever an employee was getting terminated, they used to go in Workday and they used to look that employee up and see that if the employee is a coach. Therefore, the client. The thing was that they had a concept of coach who is to mentor the team members. If an employee is getting terminated, HR is to go and see if the employee worker is a coach or not. If yes, then they will go to the coach organization, open the organization, look at the members and do a change or assignment for each of the members and remove the coach organization assignment. Basically pushing the members out of that coach organization, and then they will terminate it. Like not terminate. They will inactivate the coach organization. Now that was an entire manual process. And there were times when HRs used to forget to check for the coach organization and remove the members. And there used to be a lot of problems for enduring audits. What we did was we created this integration which will take care of the entire business process flow, which I just mentioned. How we are doing this? Simple. First, we are fetching the using a report as a service. Last report, we are fetching terminated employees. And in the launch parameters, we are passing the termination date on or after. Let's say if I want to see how many employees got terminated in the month of February, I'll put 1st February and run the integration. It will return all the terminated employees from 1st February till today. That is the 20th February once integration runs. Again, I'm using a count of log and processing the pulling the date parameter from the launch parameter. We have already learned this lp.getDate. Then we are calling this section, which is nothing but a local out, which is calling this fetch term. How we will find it? We will click on this. Click on declaration in workspace. That will take us to here. Here the game begins. This one is basically nothing, but I have put its footer as in mediation and put integration message here. Just in case, if there is any error while calling the report, I can trap the error here. How do you do that? You create the as in mediation and click on handle downstream error as true. That means if there is any error here in the component after this, it will trap it here. Again, this is kind of best practice that I follow. And as you see, in real-time scenario, you can get, for example, maybe your tenant gets. You might not expect any errors here, but might be some. Due to some reason, the tenant is down or some intermittent issue. And you might get an error. That report is not available, unable to find the report. I mean, you can trap that and your context error message will give you the details. Moving on, I pull the last report. Call it take the count. Why I am taking count is again, this is very important. Just keep in mind is also a best practice thing. If you are using a splitter and if there is no row that is going into the splitter will throw an error. There's no problem in it. It will throw an error that no, there are no rows to split. But no rows to split. It's a very technical term. You, as a developer, will understand. If someone else is supporting the integration, they will not understand what happened. For that, what I normally always do, and you can also do it in your real-time integrations, is after the workday, put an eval step. Same report, data report entry. On top of that, put a count, and then, similar to how we used to assign the data to our properties, you assign that count. And in that validate expression, you verify whether the count is, whether there is any data coming out of the report. If not, then just pass it along as a failure message, and you can send it as an info, not an error. The integration will not complete with errors or not fail. It will complete to success. But it will say that I will. Instead of telling them no rows to split and throwing an error, you can just mention that whatever. For my case, it was no terminated employees fetched within the data within that particular data range or not. That way it is clean. Whoever is supporting, whoever is monitoring the integration will not get surprised by seeing that. Oh well, some technical error and all. That way you can handle that. Then I do the split. Assign all the data. Whatever I have, we have done this in our hands-on, and finally call the getWorkers API. Because I have the terminated employee. Now I want to get some additional details about that terminated employee to identify whether the employee was a coach or not. I could have gone with creating another report, calling another Workday out REST, and identify the assigned organization to the terminated employee. But instead of that, I went with the API approach. Again, you can go with another last report as well. If you go here, it will pull you here. We are doing a getWorkers. Same thing. This is also you did. Right. You pass the property employee here and the worker reference to tell the studio that what worker I want to get the information for. And for you, I guess in our training session. This was your get workers request for Zara Tutti, and you were in the response you wanted personal information, employment information, and qualifications. But for my case, I just want to know whether the terminated worker was a coach or not, means whether the terminated worker had any organization. Or what are the organizations that the worker is assigned to. For that, in the we just need to include the rules right. I will explain later. Let me explain this. Include rules means for this particular client, if the worker is a coach to someone, he has a separate role called PDP leader. In order to bring down my XML, bring down my get workers response, because the lesser the data the studio has to deal with, the faster the execution. In the response group, I just mentioned that. Include the rules. Include the rules. If the output has a role assignment called P, DP leader, I can filter it out based on an if logic. Right? That if it is there, if the worker has a role called PDP leader, he's a coach. PDP is Professional Development Program. He's a coach. Fair enough. I hit it here. Called the Workday out soap. We did it in the training. Then we are consuming the response. And the response. How does the response look? This is our response. Look, you have envelope. Is the root body worker response, for which worker you have requested the response for. Then the worker and all the data for the workers. And as I told, that worker response is massive. Get workers provide a huge response if you don't filter out the request here, which I did using these two flags. Then in the evil, I am initializing two variables, whether it's a coach and what is the coach organization blank. Then I have added an accessibility. What does it do? Now, this is very interesting. Same thing, for we are doing a template match Excel for each. As you can see, I showed you that envelope, body worker response. You have to drill down till here to get the actual worker information. Right? For each statement is starting from this route, this node till the organization role. In this case, I'm drilling further down. You see here worker data rule, data organization rule data, then organization role. I think it should be somewhere down below anyways. I go in and checking if the worker is a coach, I put an access. If remember, in other programming languages, you can put an else with an if. But for accessibility, if you want to have an if else your go to. Logic is choose when otherwise when you are putting if it's a open and shut thing. Right. If this is this, do this. That's there is. You cannot have and you do not have else in accessibility for else. Go to choose when otherwise. Keep that in mind. I'm doing it. If organization role reference, if it has a if it at all has any, have any organization assignments like role assignments. And if it has, and then if the role ID is PDP leader. Then do all the stuff. What I'm doing here is, if you go back here, this is called a contextual variable. What I'm trying to do is I'm using this get current mediation context to initialize this variable. I want to take the coach organization. I want to put it in this flag is coach, that I can use it later after the accessibility to a validation. What I'm doing here is I initialize this contextual variable here, and in order to do that, you have to use these two initialization syntax. Tube 1 is CTX. Going back. If employee is our coach, that means if he has a role called PDP leader. Then this coach organization variable I am assigning. Remember, in our sample, we did access a variable name, select within that select. We were assigning status. Similarly, we are assigning this role data. We are traversing, going drilling to the coach organization assigning here. And this I'm assigning into is coach. This access value of this contextual variable will ensure that I can use this is coach variable outside of this accessibility code, inside an eval or inside a valid expression. I got that here. Then what am I doing? I am doing another get workers in the same accessibility. And you see envelope body get workers request. I'm creating another get workers. But here, instead of passing the request criteria, instead of passing the employee ID, I am passing the organization reference ID. Where did I get the organization reference ID from? That means I'm passing the organization name, which I got from this variable assignment coach org. I'm passing it here. Why I want, I'm asking Workday that give me all the members who are part of this organization. Because understand this, I had the worker is terminated. I got the details of the worker and the worker is a coach. Now I am doing another get workers by passing the value by giving the second get workers an input value of the coach organization that I get the child members. Worker. I get the terminated worker and verifying whether it's a coach or not using this contextual variable. Then I'm doing another get workers by giving the input parameter of as the organization, coach organization, I'm getting the members. If there are 4 members, I'm coming back to my studio. I'm getting the members again iterating one by one splitter. If you remember, splitter iterates one by one. One by one, I'm iterating through each member and finally calling another Workday out soap called change organization assignment. It's a task in Workday, basically, and I'm doing it using web service. We go back. This is done. A control goes back to members. Everything is done again. Control goes back to worker. This is done. Second worker said this loop, this nested loop, is moving on and on using this assembly. As I said, from the accessibility. We got the contextual variable that if it is a coach or not. If it is not a coach, simply employee D. Whatever the terminated workers is not a coach skipping this row, moving on to the next. We don't need to remove the members, we can just move on to the next. This is what we are doing. And for using this accessibility, what we did, we created this particular XML message. This is nothing but what I'm trying to create using accessibility and creating this code, basically this code. Instead of passing the employee and passing the organization reference. As you can see here, instead of in the request criteria, our request criteria was request reference, was worker reference. But I'm not using this request reference at all. What I'm doing is I'm passing the request criteria and passing the organization here. And this message flows out of the accessibility step. We're doing a validation. And this message in the mediation context goes here. And finally, I'm using this Workday out. I'm actually hitting Workday and I will only hit Workday if the worker is a valid coach. Here, execute when comes into picture because see, If the more web service calls you make, your integration becomes slower. To make it sharper, finer, smarter. You don't want an unnecessary web service call. If I didn't put this code here, what it will do? It will do the web service call and it will return and give a return that no response found because the worker is not a coach. Right. I don't want to do that. I don't receive that amount of increase, that amount of performance. I put the execute when. And finally, I again now go to the members, which is nothing but this section. I'm here. I go back. Then I do some validations and all that. I am taking the member count. How many coach? How many members were there under the coach? And how many the removal count initializer is? I think I talked about it earlier as well. Then I'm doing the splitting and row by row. And finally, when everything is done, I'm sending an email to the HR that, hey, all this is done for this worker. When I will send the email if all the members are removed, how do I know all the members are removed? This initialization I did from member count is member count is the count of the response which I received from the get worker. Second, get workers. Number of workers, which is nothing but number of rows. This the number of times this tag is getting repeated in the response. That means number of workers. Number of members in the coach organization. And finally, and here I am actually increasing the count when all the members are removed. The member count becomes equals to the removal count. I finally send out that email that this is done. Again, this is, I would say, a bit of complex integration, but this actually encompasses everything. All the foundational learnings that we did for all the components, along with accessibility, along with consuming REST, consuming REST report, hitting the web service using Workday outsource in the totality. Questions? Did this overwhelm you guys? Well, it's kind of a mix of HTML style and coding. I mean, I could have removed that the usage of XSLT. I could have again in for that. I had to do another round of call the another report. Take the output of the report again, split it again to evaluate eval expressions. Eval step eval expressions. But I combined everything in an accessibility code. Because accessibility is faster. If I would have called another RAST report right, it would have decreased my efficiency of my integration. And the more evaluate eval expressions you add, the more if else logic you write inside the eval expressions, the more time it takes to finish. But again, this is a bit advanced level of development. But in the beginning, try to use as much components as you can while creating an integration. Once you start having good grasp on accessibility, then you can handle things in accessibility as well. It's good to know that we have a resource like this. Right? For example, it's a termination date. You are taking it from a launch parameter and using LPIT date, you are storing it into a variable name called termination date. If you use this statement x l colon param and if you pass the exact value of the property name, then you can. Then your property value flows into your accessibility. You can directly use it as a variable, like this here. And another thing is you cannot, in your accessibility code, you cannot put greater than and equals to, like if salary is greater than 100,000. Right? You cannot put this because it actually is commonly a symbol of the XML tag. For any greater than or less than, you put GT, either ampersand GT or ampersand LT. GT is greater than, LT is less than. That is why it is greater than. I have this XML. I have coded it as ampersand LT, ampersand GT, that you can take a reference of how you can have it. This is nothing, but this code is similar to the one that I showed you. And what about if you define a parameter and a variable? When you call it with the select, you will get them on the same this, or is going to be a separate. Now it's like, let's say you have created a termination date rate. For example, this one, less a termination date on or after this is a property name. If inside the accessibility, you add this XSL pattern. And pass this as your parameter name, right? Your accessibility will treat this. Take accessibility will consider that the value of this same as this. Oh, no, but I'm referring to the go back to there. If you, when you call it to value of select equals, when you put the $, is going to show you on the list all the values. Whatever the value your property, your props is bringing, you bringing from the studio assembly inside your accessibility code. Here the parameter, the difference between variable and parameter is variable. You initialize inside the accessibility code. You assign the value of the variable inside the accessibility code. But parameter is which you pass on from outside to your accessibility code. Got it? And that is actually the last topic, guys. Please do like, share and subscribe to our channel. For more information, contact us sales@upptalk.com.